afternoon to all. My name is Faustine Munoz. I work as a global category manager for Ophthalmic's product devices at Nemera. Nemera is a drug delivery device manufacturers. I'm very pleased to be here with you today, and I'm very pleased to answer the question how to deliver sterile eye drops with a safer alternative to preservatives. The presentation is going to go through three parts. The first one will be about the multi-dose eyedroppers market and its trend to PFMD, which means preservative-free multi-dose. Then we'll talk about patient needs and expectation, and we will end up with a case study on the preservative-free multi-dose eyedropper solution that I'm going to present to you, which is Novelia. So first, multi-dose eyedroppers market and trend to preservative-free multi-dose. One way to keep multi-dose eyedroppers safe for patients is to add preservative to the formulation. However, all necessary studies have already been made to prove the negative impact of preservative to the eye. We know that preservative can cause red eyes, allergies, and ocular irritation, itchiness. It has been estimated that 50% of patient population suffers from preservative side effects. This has been scientifically proven for decades now. If we look at the global multi-dose eyedropper market, so including the multi-dose eyedroppers with preservative, so preserved, and preservative-free multi-dose eyedropper. So the global multi-dose eyedropper market, we estimate that 2.7 billion of multi-dose eyedroppers will be sold by 2020, so in 3 years' time, with a compound annual growth rate at almost 3%. So within this global market, within this multi-dose eyedropper market, we have preservative-free multi-dose eyedropper, which is still a small part. This represents only 4% of the global market, but with a tremendous growth in the coming years. We estimate that this small part of the market, so preservative-free multi-dose eyedropper market, is going to grow by plus 15% at least per year. And this is a minimum estimate. Okay? So it's an impressive growth, it's a tremendous growth. And this is going to happen all around the world. It's a global trend. Europe, as you can see in the middle of the mapping, Europe will remain the first market, the biggest market, with 2/3 of the sales of PFMD eyedropper sales, followed by a second market, which will be the North America, US and Canada. And we also saw very strong growth for Asia Pacific and for South America. So to summarize this slide and to summarize this first part about the market, the trend is definitely to offer a safer alternative solution to preservative with preservative-free multi-dose solution. Now let's talk about patient. How do we know patient? How do we know their needs? How do we know their expectation? How do we know what they expect with a PFMD, so preservative-free multi-dose eyedropper? First, to answer this question, we have to listen to patients. Listening to patients is key. Observing them, using the devices, collecting their feedbacks, discussing with them is key to build and execute user assessment, user interface, patient adherence, and misuse cases. So this is essential to listen to patients. But also, integrating patient in device development is also important. And this is what we do at Nemera. While we run studies with the patient all along the journey of the device development. From the first step, which is the identification of their needs, until the last step, which is the manufacturing of the devices. And on the screen, all the stars you can see are about the patient integration into the process. So at every step, the patient is included within the project development team. We fully integrate patient in our development, which is essential to us. We design, we develop devices for the patient, but with the patient. Running these studies all along the product development with patient, I'm pleased to share with you the key findings we had on patient needs in ophthalmics, in PFMD, in PFMD eyedroppers. The first key finding is about the compliance. When a patient takes a drug, his only concern is to be cured, okay? Or at least to reduce the pain and the symptoms of the sickness is suffering from. So side effects must be minimized as much as possible. With a PFMD eyedropper, side effects must be minimized as much as possible by avoiding any bacteria to get into contact with the formulation. And this is really essential. The second key finding is about safety. I have personally met lots of patients. They are really concerned about the risk of contamination, the hygiene of the bottle when dispensing the drop, when delivering the drop, but also the hygiene of the bottle when the bottle is closed and, for example, when it's carried in a bag or carried in a pocket. Leakage of the bottle is not acceptable because that means there is a risk of contamination. The PFMD eyedropper must be safe for the patient with an hermetic closing. This hermetic closing will avoid any contamination risk, any bacteria, any germ to get into contact with the formulation and enter the bottle. Sorry. The last key finding is about convenience. What's under convenience? It's all about ease to use, ease to control, ease to handle, and first of all, the flow control. Most of the time, the patient has to follow a specific posology, several drops at several moments within the day. So the device, the PFMD device, must control the drug flow and be able to deliver one drop at a time. This will help the patient to be compliant to his treatment. Drop dispensing until the last drop. Remaining liquid into the bottle is not acceptable. All the liquid, all the medicine must be delivered until the last drop. Above all, when you have patients, for example, in US, where they spend hundreds of dollars to pay their own medicine for glaucoma, for example. So this is not acceptable when there is remaining liquid into the bottle that cannot be dispensed. Eye targeting. Eye targeting is essential, and all device manufacturers must take this into consideration. We have to help them targeting the eye. When a patient uses a PFMD eyedropper, it cannot be used with eye license. He has to remove the eye license. With removing the eye lenses, the vision abilities are reduced. So we need to help them to target the eye to deliver the drop. So a device, for example, with a long tip is not helpful for the patient, as the long tip could damage the ocular surface. Also, on the opposite side, a very short tip in a white color when all the entire device is in white will not be helpful. A solution, there are many solutions, but also a solution that we offer, and I will show you that in our Novelia device, is we implemented a blue tip on the top of the device where the device is white. And this blue tip will help the patient to target the eyes. Finally, into convenience finding, I put easy to use with an intuitive handle. The patient will not spend time to understand the way to use the device. It has to be simple as squeezing a bottle, for example. And it has to be also adaptive to mobile use. It has to be easily carried in a bag or in a pocket with no leakage possible. All these key findings were taken into consideration at Nemera as the first foundation to design Novelia PFMD eyedropper. And now this is the third part of the presentation, and we're going to talk about this solution, that there are many solutions into the market, but today I'm here to present you the PFMD eyedropper solution Novelia. As you can see on the screen, Novelia avoids the needs for preservative in the drug and prevents bacterial contamination over treatment duration. And we claim that with Novelia, zero preservative for 100% eye protection. So, two questions can be raised. We saw the key findings just before, the patient needs and expectations. So with Novelia, we can raise two questions. First of all is how does Novelia control the drug flow and be able to deliver one drop at a time? And the second question is how Novelia prevents from any bacterial contamination. Before answering this question, I can see taking you lots of pictures. I'm going to go through Novelia functioning, which is in 5 steps. The first one is very easy, is squeezing a bottle. Okay? This is a way to use a device, a common way to use other device on the market. The second step is the valve opening to deliver the drop. First step is the valve reclosing, and I'm going to go into details on this first step. Then the air compensation, because we need air backflow into the bottle. And the last one is the remaining drop protection. Before going into details about Novelia functioning and about these 5 steps, I would like to share with you the different possibilities to design a product, to design a PFMD eyedroppers. Designing a PFMD eyedroppers remains on 2 main functions. The first one is the drop protection. The second one is the air intake. Let's talk about the first one in the first time, drop protection. There are 3 solutions. The first one is the drop protection from contamination, contamination with an hermetic closing system. With an hermetic closing system, the risk of contamination is low. In case there is a low contamination before closing the device, for example, the silver ions embedded into the cap and into the top of the device, and we will see the components of the device just later. So the silver ions embedded into the cap and into the top of the device will protect the drop. The drop will be safe for the patient. Silver ions have been used for decades in many medicinal devices, medicinal products. And it has been proven that silver ions are safe for patients. Silver ions that do not manage patient health. So this is a first solution that has been implemented into our Novelia. The second one is it's a very simple solution. It's simply to let the drop dry. Okay. But there is a risk of contamination. There is a risk of contamination until the drop is completely dry. And there is also a risk of contamination with spore-forming strains when the drop is dry, because the dry drops can be locating where the new drop will be delivered. Okay? So even if the drop is dry, there is still a risk of spore-forming strain contamination. And the last solution is about absorbing the remaining drop. This is a good solution, above all for sticky, very viscous formulation. So that means that there is an absorber that will absorb the drop, and the drop will be vented out through the holes of the cap. But it's important with this solution that the absorber we implemented has no contact with the tip. Because if there is a contact with the tip, there is a risk of contamination. And this absorption solution, without the absorber in contact with the tip, has been implemented on a new Novelia version, which is the Novelia vented cap. I told you there are two functions, drop protection and air intake. So about air intake, the two existing solutions are the filtration technologies, so using filters, and the pure flow technology, which is implemented in Novelia. About filters, and I'm going to go into details about that, it's impossible to guarantee 100% integrity in mass production. And I will explain that into details in the coming slide. With the pure flow technology, which is a silicone membrane we use on Novelia, everything is controlled, everything is under control. There is no risk of contamination. No living organism can go through or cross the barrier. I told you there are 5 steps into Novelia functioning. The first one was squeezing the bottle. The second one was opening the valve to deliver the drop. So now let's talk about the third one, the valve reclosing. Once the patient stops applying a pressure on the bottle, the pressure of the liquid decreases and the valve moves back in tight position. And this is supported by a spring. Unfortunately, I cannot show you with a laser on the screen, but it's just there. So this one-way valve, also named non-return valve, prevents liquid from being sucked back into the bulk. Then this solution will prevent any retro-contamination by liquid backflow. There is no liquid backflow, so this is essential, and that means that there is zero risk of contamination. For your information, to accommodate different formulation and target different drop size, we have developed different valve size to provide very small drops to larger drops. So there are 6 different valves available with Novelia. Step 4 is about air compensation. Once the drop is delivered and when the action of the non-return valve is done, we need air backflow into the bottle. So this intake of contaminated air, which is a contaminated air, will take place via a venting system that you can see with the pink circle. Okay, so you can see with the red arrow that contaminated air will enter the bottle, but will not reach the drug, will not reach the medicine, and this is essential. So this venting system is a silicone membrane called PureFlow. This silicone membrane is a solid, non-porous material. It's homogeneous and there is no hole. This intermolecular distance is in nanometers. And you can see on the left drawing, it's a drawing showing the silicone membrane properties. So in red, you can see the germs, and in blue, you can see the air. And these are the properties of the silicone. By using the air permeation property of the silicone, PureFlow technology allows air to diffuse into the bottle and prevent any germ, any bacteria, any contamination to enter the bottle. PureFlow technology is patenting. PureFlow technology is only on Novelia. 100% of the air entering the bottle is pure. There is absolutely zero risk of contamination. So I just explained you the functioning, I just described to you the functioning of the PureFlow technology, so the silicone membrane we use. And as I told you before, there are other technology based on filtration technology. So I'm going to show you now the disadvantages of filter technologies. Filter with pore size under 0.22 microns does not provide a continuous barrier through product light. It has been scientifically proven that bacteria can pass through a mesh of 0.2 microns. Secondly, sterilizing filter cannot be verified by 100% online integrity testing. And I put all the explanation just for your information, so we'll go through that. Testing methods introduces bacteria and liquid onto the surface of the filter. This starts bacterial growth on the filter and therefore decreases the subsequent shelf life of the device. Therefore, inline testing of multi-dose eyedroppers that rely on filtration technology is not possible. Sterilizing filters fail if wetted. We've just seen that PureFlow technology is used for air filtration, but it's also used for flow control. To accommodate the different formulations on the market and to provide the best flow control, drug flow, we have developed different solutions. Silicone membrane, so different PureFlows. From PureFlow 10 to PureFlow 1500 to accommodate the very low viscosity, such as water, for example, low viscosity to very high viscosity for very sticky formulation. We've done that. We have designed and developed these 3 different PureFlow, not only to accommodate the formulation of the customers, but also to answer one of the patient needs, one of the patient expectations, to have 1 drop at a time into his eyes. So we mentioned step 1, bottle squeezing. Step 2, valve opening to deliver a drop. Valve reclosing as the 3rd step. Air compensation for the bottle as the 4th step. And now we're going to discuss, I'm going to show you the last step, which is the remaining drop protection. some residual liquid, which can be 20% of the nominal drop side, can remain on the outside of the tip. Why? Because the liquid is preventing from returning into the container by the one-way valve, by the non-return valve. So this is what we saw. So there is some residual liquid, as you can see, on all devices on the market. The liquid remaining is protected from bacterial growth by the presence of silver ions in the outer components, which are the top and the cap of the device only. And this is what you can see on the bottom of the slide on the left drawing. You see the cap, you see the top, and you see the residual drop. The remaining drop is further protected by the cap closing. This does not influence the shelf life, as even without the cap reclosing, the remaining liquid dries, minimizing the likelihood of bacterial growth. Now, on the right drawing, you can see that the cap is closed on the device, and what is essential to mention now is that silver ions are in contact only with the remaining drop, which is preventing from returning to the bottle by the non-return valve. So silver ions are only in contact with the remaining drop, not and never with the drug. Silver ions act by contact, and they are safe for the drop. They are safe for the patient. With this remaining drop, with silver ions, we ensure that there is zero risk of contamination, which I remind you is one of the key expectations of our patients. If you remember the key findings about patient needs and expectation, we saw compliance, we saw safety, with their concern about the risk of contamination and the hygiene of the bottle. And the last one was convenience. And within the convenience finding feature, one of them was listed, and it was targeting the eye. The solution we implemented on Novelia is to add a blue tip on the top of the device to help patients to target their eyes. Also, with Novelia, we have an intuitive and user-friendly device, easy to carry and easy to use as any standard eyedroppers. To summarize, I would say that Novelia meets completely patient needs and expectation. About safety, there is no risk of contamination. When the drop is delivered, there is also no contamination with the remaining drop, and there is an hermetic closing that will prevent any bacteria to come into the bottle, and there is no leakage of our device. And about convenience, as we saw, there is an easy way to target the eyes with the blue tip. It's easy to use and with an intuitive handling, as you can see on the picture in the middle of this graph. And it's adapted to mobile use because it's a small device that you can easily use for transportation in a bag or in a pocket. And also, with Novelia, we control the flow, the drug flow, and we're able to deliver one drop at a time. Thank you very much.